So another really interesting behavior we see in a lot of RPGs is the ability for certain enemies to come back to life. Usually they only have one extra life, but sometimes they have more. Sometimes they have as many as two or three or even four. But I think that this is a really interesting behavior and one that has implications on combat. When you're fighting a number of enemies, it's important to recognize that some of them you've got to kill twice. So to do that, we're going to hop right into our NPC underscore health script. And at the top, what we want to do is add another public integer variable, and this one's going to be called lives. Now we want to assign this one a default value of 1 because we want all of our enemies to start with 1 life, but we want to specify 1 or 2 of them to have a couple more. Similar to our flee function, we just don't want to apply this to everybody all at once. We want to pick and choose which of our enemies we apply this health buff or this life buff to. So now that we have our lives variable, what we're going to do is create another coroutine. So if you remember, coroutines are initialized by saying IEnumerator, and we're going to call this one respawn. So we say IEnumerator respawn with our open and close parentheses and then our open and close curly brackets. And you'll notice the red line there. If you remember in our previous coroutines, we need a yield return new wait for seconds. And for this one, we'll say 0.5f in order to get that to go away. That's because coroutines need this line to function. Now, above this line, we want to do a couple things. We want to set our health equal to 100. We want to disable our collider because we don't want our character to be able to take damage while it's dead. So what we're going to say is get component capsule collider in our parentheses, and we're going to say dot enabled equals false. And what that's going to do is just disable the collider until we choose to re-enable it, so it cannot take damage while it's quote unquote dead. Now, after the 0.5 seconds, which this 0.5 is meant to mimic the delay on our destroy function that we use when we actually kill the enemy, we want to say get component in children. But in this one, we're looking for what's called a skinned mesh renderer. What this class is it holds the information relating to the visuals associated with our character's model. So for the skeleton, it's the skeleton himself. For the spider, it's the body of the spider. And we don't want to destroy anything. We just want it to disappear for a few seconds. So by getting this component and disabling it by setting enabled to false, we effectively make it disappear. We're going to do the same thing for the UI canvas, which is also a child of our game object. And by setting enabled to false on that object, what we're effectively doing is hiding the health bar and the health total and all that stuff. We want to hide everything before we bring it back to life, because of course it disappears and then it comes back. So now we're going to add another yield return new. Wait for seconds. 3 this time. We want a 3-second delay between when we come back. And now, well, actually, before we do anything else, we're actually going to move this line. And the reason for that is that we want... Oh, never mind. We'll leave it there. I think it'll be fine there. If we have to come back to it, we'll come back to it. But for now, what we're going to do is after the 3 seconds, we're going to take both of these lines and just copy paste them. Same with this line up top, this capsule collider line. We're going to copy paste it. And instead of having them all set to false, we're now going to set them back to true. And what that's going to do is just turn them back on. So effectively what we're doing is just turning the enemy invisible for a whole 3 seconds and then turning it back on. Now, an important note here is that we need to set our slider value back to what our health is, because our slider value won't update on its own. So we can copy this line from our start function using Control-C and paste it in with Control-V or Command-C, Command-V. And that'll update our slider to the appropriate value. And now that we've got all that, we need to drop down into our take damage function and tell it to respawn us if we have lives. So in this health is less than or equal to 0 column, what we're going to say is lives is equal to lives minus 1. and then we're going to add a conditional that said if lives is greater than 0, we want to start coroutine, respawn. And we need to add that in quotation marks because it doesn't like just getting the names of the coroutine unless it's a string. So we put it in quotation marks. Otherwise, if lives is not greater than 0, as in lives is 0, we want to add an else statement, which we do by just hitting enter after our conditional and typing else, and then more curly brackets. And we're going to take our destroy call here, and we're going to remove it and put it inside our if else. So now if our lives is equal to 0, we will destroy the object. Otherwise, we'll start this coroutine and kill it and then bring it back. So let's test it. Let's see if this works. So we'll choose the spider. We'll go over to his NPC health component. We'll set lives to 2. And now I will run him down, get him to attack me, and kill him. There we go. He disappears. And then after 3 seconds, he's back. Oh, but we notice his health still reads -20, which isn't what we want. But we can fix that. So now you'll see he actually disappears. You'll notice he's no longer in our hierarchy. But we want to fix that health text not updating properly. So similar to the slider, we need to actually assign this text value back to the proper number. So all we have to do is highlight this, copy it, and paste it into our respawn coroutine. And now you see if I try it again. It takes a second sometimes. There we go. If I try it again, we go to 0, he disappears. He's still there in the hierarchy on the right, but now suddenly he's back. And he immediately killed himself on my sword, but that's okay. But yeah, we've got a respawning enemy. And you can choose whichever enemy you want. I, in fact, think it makes the most sense for the skeletons to come back, but you feel free to pick what you think works best.